All right, here we go.
When we gathered for worship on March 8th, we didn't know it would be our last in-person worship service for the foreseeable future. The following week, we suspended worship due to COVID-19. People needed the church more than ever as coronavirus changed the way that we live, work, gather, and worship. So we had to figure out how to walk with God in the midst of crisis. This is what God's people have always done.
When Pastor Lynn called me after we stopped our live services, it was a very emotional time. We knew that we had to go online, but we also knew that we had these COVID restrictions to deal with, so we couldn't get a big crew all together at the same time. We considered some alternatives, doing live streaming, doing Zoom calls. Ultimately, we thought doing a film service that, as closely as possible, gave people the experience of a live church service would be the best thing to do.
It was my job to figure out how to film our service in the beginning. We don't have a bunch of fancy equipment, but Pastor Lynn and I both have iPhone 6s. And come to find out the cameras are pretty good on those. So to hold everything steady, didn't have tripods. We propped it up on a table and a step stool, hold it steady with hymnals so the phone wouldn't fall over, and film from there. We sent it all off to Grant, who put it together, and this is what you really call guerrilla filmmaking.
Safety precautions because of the virus meant that we could not have our choir sing. Our choir director, Cady, really carried us through. He came in on his own time and filmed himself singing and playing the music for our worship service. With Paul coming in and providing our music, we were able to film the essence of a real worship service.
Once we had our basic format down, I focused on keeping the experience fresh. We did dramatic scripture readings, which is something that we've always done. And I encouraged Cady to sing something people enjoy very much. We also discovered we can do some things in a pre-recorded service that we can't do live. For example, this excerpt from the story of Elijah.
Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Jezebel was enraged. She sent a message to Elijah. Elijah was afraid of Jezebel. He fled for his life to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah. After a day's journey into the wilderness, he sat down under a solitary broom tree, and he prayed that he might die.
And this lovely rendition of Beulah Land by Paul's sister and nieces.
I'm kind of homesick for a country to which I've never been before. No sad goodbyes will there be spoken, and time won't
of this takes time, lots of time, as well as energy and heart. Pastor and production team are stretched about as far as possible, but we hope to continue this format until we can again gather in person for worship. When we are allowed to reopen, there will still be people who are too vulnerable to come back for live services. So we are adding a live streaming system to our sanctuary, which will allow people who can't come in person to participate at home. There you have Guerrilla Religious Broadcasting 101. It's what you do when you don't have a congregation, you don't have a choir, you don't have fancy cameras or a tech crew or a budget. But what you do have is God. As it says in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5, trust in the Lord with all your heart. God blessed Canoga Park First Church with a remarkable team who were able to bring worship online in 3 to 4 days. I'd like to thank Trish and Grant Simmons, Paul, Cady, Grace Leighton, and my ever-faithful husband, Stan Westover. We are stronger than ever in our worship attendance. Thanks be to God.